button.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual workshop in our Moving Forward series. Today's session is titled The Savvy Job Seeker, and we'll be learning about job search strategies during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Mallory Newby, and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. I'm also a career coach here at the University Career Center. And so just a reminder, today's workshop will be recorded and posted in our website, and that will be shared along with previous sessions covering topics on resume writing, online etiquette, LinkedIn networking, personal branding, and tips for virtual interviewing. Excuse me. We also want to hear from you, so I encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll add those into today's discussion. So let's meet today's presenter and special guest. We have our director at the University Career Center, Bill Fletcher, who is going to be sharing today's topic with you. So Bill, if you would take it away.
All right. Thank you, Mallory. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with everyone today and talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is how to job search, being a savvy job seeker. And so we've got a lot to cover today. And so 4 goals are listed there for you on the slide. But we know that job searching in this difficult economy is different than job searching in a prosperous economy. This upcoming July, we will all be hearing the fact that we are in a recession, so we're prepared for that. We know that's coming by definition, 2 quarters of decreasing gross domestic product. So we're not going to be shocked by that. Our last recession was called the Great Recession. And my slide here is jumping around, so I'll get back on. But our last recession was called the Great Recession. And the Great Recession ended over 10 years ago. So some people may not even be that knowledgeable of the last recession. It was called the Great Recession because we hit an unemployment record of 10%. And by comparison, in the 1930s, the Great Depression was 25% unemployment for a sustained period of time. So now we're in the unprecedented time of having a global pandemic, and we know that the current unemployment rate is 14.7%. So we are already at a higher unemployment rate than the last recession. Now, rest assured, you're in a good category. If you're a college student or a college graduate, you're in a good category because the unemployment numbers for college graduates are better than in other demographic areas. So some of those numbers can seem staggering, but there is opportunity for college graduates, and we're going to talk about how to make that happen today. So this virtual workshop will focus on targeted and deliberate steps to take during the coronavirus crisis to find a job or internship. And I may say job searching throughout here, but when I say job searching, these principles apply to whether you're seeking a full-time entry-level position or whether you are searching for an internship. And so with our 4 main goals today, we'll quickly cover the first 3, which is the 2 basic job search groups, an overview of the strategies in these 2 groups, and which is the most successful of the 2 groups. And then I want to spend the remaining time on different tips and examples for implementing your strategies in your search. So we talked about being a savvy job seeker. We don't want you to just be a job seeker. We want you to be a savvy job seeker, which means you're going to be experienced, knowledgeable, well-informed, and shrewd. And so that's what it takes to secure a job in any economy, but especially in a recession, in a pandemic type of environment. So we want to acknowledge that everyone's job search is different. So the tips I go over today will be different for each individual because the factors of each individual affect how they job search. So if you're a local versus wanting a national position, if you're able to relocate, you know, if you have family or significant others, your need for immediate income, working while job searching. There's the saying that job searching is a full-time job. And as you'll see through my presentation, there are a lot of things to do that take a significant amount of time, but the return on investment is worth it. So a lot of students will have student loans. When are those due dates? Make certain you're aware of what your loans are and when they're due. And then, of course, every student has a different major, GPA, experience, extracurricular activities. And my last point is, and I put it up here because I think perhaps one of the worst things you can do is that if you don't know what you want to do and you're uncertain about how to implement your job search, one of the worst things you can do is go back to graduate school just to postpone your job search, because you may be incurring greater debt for a degree that may not be necessary in what you want to do. So, you know, if you know what you want to do and that requires graduate school, that's a great path for you to take. But job searching, internship searching is what we're going to talk about in the remaining slides in this presentation today. So there are two approaches to the job search process. You can basically take a lot of the tips, a lot of the strategies, and put them in these two buckets. One would be called the hidden job market, and the second one would be called the open or overt job market, meaning it's open to everyone, and everyone has access to it. So clearly the hidden job market includes these four things: networking, informational interviewing, researching, and I did add internships and co-ops. We'll see in a minute. It could also be under the open job search job market. But when you look at all the things that are involved, all the strategies involved in job searching, you'll see a lot of them do fall under the open job market. So those are the jobs that are in the University Career Center, jobs that are on internet job boards or aggregators. So for example, Career Builder is a job board that employers pay to post positions on. Indeed and Simply Hired are called aggregators. They go out and they have algorithms, and they go out and search the internet for jobs that are posted, and they bring it back in to their platform. So they're trying to bring it all together in one place. These are positions that are out there and accessible to everyone, just like an organization's website. Then you have for-profit agencies. These are temp agencies, recruiting firms, headhunters, staffing agencies, but these are companies or organizations that help other organizations hire. Government job agencies. The state government has different agencies throughout their state. In our current state, in region, we have Kentuckiana Works, and that will come up in just a minute on another slide. There's all types of job fairs, and there's jobs advertised on specialized sites, and let's not leave out social media. But all of these fall under what is called the open job market. What I'm going to spend my time talking about today is the most successful job search strategies, and the most successful are going to be the hidden job market. That's going to be A, B, and C: networking, informational interviewing, and researching prospects. And there's different research out there that indicates that as many as 60 to 80% of the jobs out there are not posted. They are in the hidden job market. So what that means is that 100% of job seekers are basically vying for the 20 to 40% of the positions that are out there. So the competition in the open job market is going to be fierce, and especially in this kind of economy. So when we talk about open versus hidden versus open, the differences can be subtle. I like to point out basically how they can move from one area to another. So let's say you do go to a career fair and a recruiter is hiring for a product specialist, but you're interested in social media, and that recruiter refers you to someone within the organization or refers your resume to someone in the organization. You have just moved from the open job market, a job fair, a career fair, into the hidden job market, meaning you don't know that a job is there, but you have a contact and you're now going to work that contact. I also put co-ops and internships under both open job market and hidden job market, because if you think about it, if you apply for an internship or a co-op from a job board, that's the open job market. Everybody sees that position. Everybody can apply to that position if they meet the criteria. But the goal in research shows us that most employers have these programs as a talent pipeline into their organization. So when they convert that intern into a full-time hire, that intern has just taken a full-time position, a position that was never posted, a position that never saw a job board. So those are examples of the open job market, the hidden job market. So in terms of just a basic definition, hidden, why is it hidden? I think it's important to understand that. But the hidden job market are those jobs that are just not advertised and they're just not posted online for whatever reason. And here are some of the reasons. In this type of economy, employers do not want to be inundated with a lot of applicants, especially a lot of applicants who may not fit the criteria. So they can save money by not advertising, because Career Builder and a lot of these sites cost a lot of money for employers to post. They may prefer getting candidates from employee referrals. They hire candidates internally from within. I talked about the internship program and converting to a full-time hire. It could be that the organization is expanding into a new market and they don't want to make that announcement yet to the public or to the competition, but they're hiring for that expansion so that they're ready. Most likely, the position was never posted because someone networked and they were hired into the position before it was posted. And that is what I call the sweet spot. So I want to challenge you all to find that sweet spot. And so remember, job boards are good, but everyone is using the job board. What you need to do is start to leverage your network and gaining information. You are seeking and on the search for more information that will help you in your job search. So we use these terms hidden job market and open job market, and it's important to understand where you need to be spending the majority of your time. So with the remainder of this presentation, I want to focus on some of those tips for the open job market. But before we do that, I want to see if there's any questions at this point.
Yeah, I have a question here from a finance major who is going into their second year and have just switched their major. And they want to know, how soon should you start to look for internships or jobs? And specifically maybe within the school year. So early fall or spring, kind of that recruiting season.
Okay, so finance major, second year, specifically in terms of internships, they would start to get into some of their core coursework. So sophomore year is a good time to start that. I would say, sort of tongue in cheek, that the best time to start is your freshman year, because as we'll see with some of these tips coming up, it's about gaining information, gaining knowledge, clarifying your objective, and building your network. So these are all strategies that take time. So whereas the hidden job market is the most successful, it is also the most time intensive. The open job market is not as time intensive. I can go to Indeed.com and look at the open jobs right now and probably spend as little as 15 minutes. If I really did a good job, I could probably spend 2 hours. But that's not that much time, but it's not going to be that successful. So for someone second year, now is a good time. I also, of all the years as an undergraduate, the sophomore year I think is the really critical year. Freshman year is getting adjusted to college, getting adjusted to the college curriculum, way of life. Sophomore year, you're starting to get into that the content of your courses and are ready to implement some of these strategies. Good question.
Absolutely, and that student did share that they were able to get an internship for the summer, so congratulations. And we have a few more questions here. How can I find people to network with?
Oh, that's excellent, because that is where I'm going to spend the remainder of this presentation, is talking about how to find people and how to find information. So hang tight on that, the answer to that question.
And then I have one. In an economic downturn, are there particular industries or fields that might provide better or more opportunities for me?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, and I think the promising thing about this recession we're going into, is this recession, all recessions are caused by bad economic situations, but this economic situation we're going into, or that we are in right now, that's caused by a global pandemic. So it doesn't mean that our economic systems were faltering before. So that is good. That is actually very good. But we can look at the industries that are hard hit by the pandemic, and that can sort of direct us maybe to which industries, which career fields we may want to hold off on. We might want to redirect our plans at this time into different career fields. I do have a couple examples in a minute, but obviously we know and hear a lot about grocery stores being a necessary, essential organization, Amazon being essential. So when you think about the essential versus non-essential businesses, that will tell you what is a good career field, which is a good industry to target at this time. But we will be out of the pandemic eventually, matter of time. And so that's the good news, is that hopefully the economy will rebound more quickly than the last recession. But you can look at the COVID-19 and see which industries have been hit the hardest by COVID-19 and let that guide you.
Thanks, Bill. That's the questions, all the questions that we have at this point.
Okay, very good. So one of the most important parts about being a savvy job seeker is the most challenging part of having a target. You need to have a target, and this is what a lot of students struggle with, a lot of graduates, a lot of postgraduates, people who've been out there, is what do you want to do? And keep this in mind, your first job, your first even career field does not define you for the rest of your working life. It's the place where you start and build your skill sets, and you continue to build your skill sets as you move throughout your career. But you have to have a place to start. And if you want people to help you, and that's what we're going to be talking about, is how to get people to help you, then you have to be able to communicate with them. This is what I'm looking for. So you have to be specific and not vague. The third bullet up there, I get this straight from Donald Asher, great author and speaker. There's a big difference between being an editorial assistant and an assistant editor. One of them makes the coffee and the other one drinks the coffee. You're at two different ends of the spectrum there. So you have to understand the field you're going into. And so that's what we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides, is how to gain that information and how to connect with people in those areas. And so if you think you might have more than one area, as Mr. Asher indicates here, pick 1 to 3 of those areas and exhaust it. So if you're that sophomore, now is a good time to start doing that. Now is a good time to use your internships to do that. If you're out there in the job market now, you have to look at what are your primary drivers for job searching, career versus income, and start talking to people, start upskilling your skill sets so that you can move in the direction you want to go into. So when we talk about specificity, here are a couple of examples. It just shows you that you can't say, I'm looking for a position in banking and finance, to use an example on the screen here. You have to be able to say, I'm interested in wealth management, or I'm interested in retail management, or investment banking, mergers and acquisitions. You might start exploring that with someone and figure out there's other areas you want to go into, but you have to start with an idea in mind. I always use human resources as an example, because human resources is a great field, but it's a broad field. Do you want to be in talent acquisition, compensation and benefits, training and development, organizational development, labor and employee relations, or risk management? A lot of different areas that require a lot of different skill sets. So it's challenging because most students and most graduating seniors simply want a job. I just want a job. I was told to get a college degree, I get a job, and I want a job. And you can get a job. Getting a career and starting a career is different. And most employers, if you're a hiring manager, you have a position that has job factors in the job description, and you've got to justify your hire. So your hire has got to have certain skill sets. So the employer is approaching it very specifically, and oftentimes the job seeker is approaching it very generally. So we have to understand that we have to talk about what value the job seeker, the candidate, can add to the employer, especially in a recession. So you see my example on the screen up there, things not to say: that you're looking for a challenging and rewarding position, utilizing your skills and abilities with the chance for advancement. That's how employment will help the candidate, not how the candidate can help and what the candidate wants to do to help the employer. So I think the crux of the foundation of what you need to do is talk to people. So in this example, talking to people is success. So identify a job you'd like to explore, find somebody doing that job right now and talk to them. And so as Don Asher says, and do this for the rest of your life. So because this is what managing your career is about. You're not just the first job, but where does that job lead you and the next steps. So what this is called is informational interviewing, not to be confused with job interviewing. Job interviewing, you're going for a job, you're being asked questions, they're going to hire you for a position. An informational interview is where you ask someone, can I have a couple of minutes of your time to ask you some questions? I'm looking at my career options and you're in this exciting field and I want to get your feedback. And as the tip on the screen here indicates, you know, it's nice to have people in high places, but what you really want to do is target people who, again, are 2 years into the job you want. They're not in a position to hire you necessarily, but oh, do they have a lot of information, a wealth of information they can share with you of how to navigate the job search process. So you're becoming a savvy job seeker, and they can refer you to other people who can refer you to other people. So you start, if you saw our LinkedIn networking webinar that is recorded on our website, we talked about using LinkedIn in this regard to make connections, but you really want to move out 2 or 3 rings, 2 or 3 degrees in terms of your connections. And informational interviewing is a good way to do that. Eventually, informational interviewing will lead to job interviewing. And in fact, I've had students in my career classes that I've made go out and do an informational interview, and it resulted in an internship hire for them. So, you know, a lot of times it can move from that informational interview into what is unknown to the student at the time as a job interview. So talking to people and informational interviewing. Remember, if you call to set up the appointment, if you call to ask somebody out for coffee or lunch, you're the person picking up the tab, okay? And unlike a job interview, you're asking the questions because you're interviewing the employer. You're interviewing the professional in the field. So have those good questions to ask. And look at our website. We have information on our website on this, as well as we'll be having upcoming webinars addressing some of these areas as well. But how do you find people to talk to? And that's the next slide I want to focus on: getting information and connecting with like-minded people. And by like-minded people, I'm talking about professional associations, which are membership organizations of individuals who are discussing or promoting particular issues or particular career fields. So if you're sitting out there listening to me today and you're like, I don't know any professional associations in the area I'm interested in, you now have one of your first to-do items: locating professional associations. So ONET Online and Occupational Outlook Handbook are two great government websites that, as you read through different career fields, if you look for that section, they will tell you what are the professional associations related to this area. On our website, we have Focus 2 Career Assessment, which contains a lot of career information. You can go in and just look up different career fields. What can I do with this major is another resource on our website where you can look up career information. Then, of course, an internet search: professional associations in blank, okay? And you will figure out which associations are out there. A lot of these associations can have professional certifications you can obtain. They will have state, local, national conferences. They have tons of educational webinars, and now during COVID-19, most everything is online. And so you really can get access to a lot of networking and a lot of information. Some of them will have job posting sites. So now you're moving into the open job market. Jobs are posted, and so everybody can see it. But you're really here for that information and to connect, especially if they have a membership directory. If you go back and look at our LinkedIn presentation, all of these professional associations will also have LinkedIn groups. So you could join the LinkedIn groups. And what's most important for those of you out there who are currently students, a lot of these are membership organizations, so they charge dues. But the student dues are much more affordable than the professional dues. So you certainly want to join as a student. And so to pick on one of my favorite fields again, human resources, Society for Human Resource Management. If you're looking to go out in human resources and you don't know the areas of human resources and you don't know about SHRM and you don't know what SHRM is, that's going to be a key indicator to the employer right there that you're not really knowledgeable or serious about the field. So professional associations. And then, you know, just to illustrate the point and for sort of tongue in cheek, I put down there at the bottom the National Funeral Directors Association. So to illustrate that there are associations out there for all types of career fields, but also for different populations. So different minorities and disadvantaged groups also have professional associations. You see up there the National Society for Black Engineers. So get connected, and professional associations is an excellent way to do that. Quickly, moving through this, you need to be well read. You need to know what's going on in the world greater than your campus or greater than your local community within your city. So looking at national publications, especially if that publication is directly related to your career field, and also what I call at the bottom there, industry and trade publications. So there are certain industries or trades or career fields that if you go into, you're expected to know about that. I had a recruiter one time at a previous institution, was on campus recruiting for investment banking, very high sought out positions by students, and also a very competitive field. And that particular investment bank had a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal that day. And he said, if a student were to come in and tell me I saw your full page ad in the Wall Street Journal, that would have really resonated. By the way, a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal is not cheap. So You need to know what's important in your field. On the next slide, regional periodicals. So again, we talked about where are you doing your job search? Are you doing it nationally? Are you doing it regionally? Are you doing it locally? And so these are the resources I want to spend a little bit more time on. One would be the business section of the Metropolitan newspaper. And you see some of the examples there from at least this immediate geographic area of the U.S., from St. Louis to Chicago, Indianapolis, and so forth, Atlanta. And as I was looking at this and updating this, it's also important to note that most of these newspapers are owned by the same publisher, by the same company. So keep that in mind, that you're sort of getting a unified source of information. And that too is the next example under business newspapers. Every major metropolitan area, such as Louisville, will have a business newspaper. This is my number one tip right here, is that everyone from the University of Louisville who is a current student or who graduates from University of Louisville should be reading the Business First, the Louisville Business First. You need to know what's going on if you are job searching in the Louisville market. If you are from Chicago or if you're from Dallas, and we do have students, we pull from all over the country, and you think you're going to go back home or to those areas, then you need to know what's going on in that community. So I've been here in Louisville for about 2 years. I was originally in the Nashville area, so I weekly read the Nashville Business Journal and now read the Louisville Business Journal. And you may be saying to yourself, I'm not a business major. Why would I read the business newspaper? You need to understand that these newspapers, such as the metropolitan newspapers, talk about business, talk about government, nonprofit, healthcare, education. So it covers a wide array of opportunities and information that you should know just as a member of the community. So I'm going to show you 3 slides coming up as an example from the Louisville Business First, just to illustrate my point. And it looks like I'm doing okay on time. So I just wanted to point that out, but you do not have to be a business major. And I'm going to hopefully illustrate that with some of these examples. So because I'm working from home and not in the office very much, May 1st, May 1st, Louisville Business First was the most recent copy I had of the Business First. And I wanted to use something that was in the middle of the COVID-19. So I can go back to previous editions. It's published weekly, but I wanted to use something that would sort of show the impact of the pandemic on the job market. So here's just some stories, and I want to reframe your looking at what this could mean. And again, think back to that first or second, third slide where I said everyone's job search is different, but I want to show you how to read for leads, okay? So the cover story in this edition is all about the Kentucky Derby and the businesses associated with the Kentucky Derby and how they're doing and what they're doing. So they're talking to the CEOs, the presidents of about 5 different organizations, and it's sort of a Q&A. So you really get some in-depth information. So that could be a great lead for a number of majors and a number of people who didn't think, oh, I didn't know that the Kentucky Derby, I knew it was a horse race. Okay, I think anybody from Louisville knows that, but the industry, the business that's behind the Kentucky Derby. You'll also find out that the University of Louisville, second bullet, is seeking fast track approval for COVID-19 treatment. Are you into research? Are you a science major? Are you a public health major? Are you a public policy, political science major? You know, those are all things, if you want to get into that sector, you need to understand about the trials for new drugs, how to bring them to market, and what's going on specifically in regard to COVID-19. Perhaps I think a very good example would be the third bullet. So there was a big article about COVID-19 igniting the adoption of telehealth. So some of you may have done telehealth. My daughter just had a telehealth appointment with her doctor. You get on a Zoom call with your doctor. 8 weeks ago, not many people were doing this. The term was coined, telehealth, but it just, it's all driven by insurance, and the insurance companies were saying, no, not going to reimburse doctors for it. Now we're in an entirely different world, and telehealth has taken off. So in this huge article, you see a quote in there: Louisville-based nonprofit palliative and hospice provider Prosperous Health has announced it's rolled out a telehealth and remote monitoring platform produced by TapCloud. Now, I don't know either of those two organizations, but I'm guessing that, again, if I were healthcare administration, public health, public policy, computer information, computer engineering, training and development, or salesperson, and I hear about a company rolling out a new product in a growing field, that would be called a job lead. And you got people's names in that article, and you now have a way to connect. You contact somebody and tell him or her you are reading their article and found it fascinating in the Business First, and you've just opened a door. How is your industry that you may be looking at, how has that been impacted by COVID-19? You really need to know that in this economy, not only to guide your job search, but so that you're a more savvy job seeker when you are actually job interviewing and you know about what's going on in the industry. So the third from the last article, steps taken in reopening the state's economy. And the last two, when I see an article that says we're expanding or we're growing, that is sort of a bell ringing for me. So if you've got an office complex growing, you'd have to ask yourself, who's the investor? Who's the commercial real estate agency? Who's the bank that's funding that initiative? What is the engineering firm? Who is the engineering firm building that? And who are the tenants? Typically, they have tenants lined up even before they start building. And is it a major entity that you would be interested in? And then finally, also sort of illustrates knowing what's going on in the economy. I think most of us know what PPE is, but do you know what PPP is? And that would be Paycheck Protection Program. That's some of the federal stimulus money from the government. So if you're in the construction industry, engineering, or accounting, or anything that could be associated with that, you might want to know about PPP, excuse me. They could have picked something a little bit more different, but PPP. Those of us from the last recession will remember TARP, Toxic Asset Relief Program, and how that was used to help out the banks when the housing bubble burst in the last recession. So this is just one example of articles. Quickly, I want to show you two things. This couldn't have been a better example right here of how to look at and read publications from a job-seeking frame of mind. So here we have people on the move. All the business newspapers will have this. They'll have people who are changing jobs, moving up, so forth. And we now have this employer, Waterfront Botanical Gardens. And we see that they have 5 people who are recently hired into the organization. And look at their titles: Youth Education Specialist, Staff Accountant, Special Event Manager, Horticulturalist, and Facilities Coordinator. What kinds of majors would prepare one for that kind of work? Would that be exciting work? Could that be done by a liberal arts major? Could it be done by an accounting major? Could it be done, by a teacher education major? These are very good job leads, and now you can go out and start communicating and say, hello, I saw your feature on your new position in the Louisville Business First. I'd like to ask you some questions. Do you have some time for coffee? This is how you build your network beyond the people you know to other people. And finally, for the Business First, checking out my time. Yes, we've got a few more minutes and we're coming in close to the end. So The Business First, all the business newspapers are known for their book of lists, their lists. So in this particular edition that I'm using as my example here today, it happened to be on breweries, which is of particular interest to me because I like craft beer. And Goodwood is top on there. And so they will show you all the information about the top breweries, and that can tell you who the players are in the market. I also challenge people when looking at these lists to look at those closer to the bottom of the list. It doesn't mean they're last. It just means that they're last in where they cut it off. Did they cut it off at 25, 50, or 100? So it can give you a good idea for who's in the market. And the last half of this newspaper edition was devoted to the brewery industry. And so you see number 2 on there is Against the Grain. And so they featured one of the partners in Against the Grain, graduate of Indiana University, talked about how he got to where he is, talked about his 3 other partners and what all parts of the business they handle. And it's a very interesting article just to be in the know. But if that's something that's of interest to you, that could be a job lead for you. But I want to point out on the right side of the screen that every edition of the Business First and other business periodicals by biz journals, they will do 1 to 2 lists. And at the end of the year, they'll pull all those lists together in a book of lists, which you can get from your regional or campus library to look at. So there's over 200 pages outlining all kinds of interesting industries. And I've listed just a small number here on the screen. But I'd like to point out the Fast 50. Those are the fastest growing, and that can be interesting. You know, a fast growing business organization is one to certainly hook up with, or maybe it's nonprofit organizations. Publicly traded companies mean they're traded on the stock market and they have investors. Privately traded company, or not traded, private companies rather, are owned by someone or an entity. And so private companies can be hard to get information on. So when you see these lists, that gives you a good foothold on how to attack and how to expand your network into these areas. So I cannot overemphasize the list here in terms of broadening your network. So in this section of the presentation, I just have 2 more slides. One, and both of these are on chambers of commerce. So I have here a definition. I have found that a lot of students are not aware of the Chamber of Commerce and what a Chamber of Commerce actually does. It again is a membership organization, like we talked about earlier, professional association, but these are all the businesses in a geographical area who come together and promote business in that area. And by business, I mean not just businesses, but government, healthcare, nonprofit. For example, the University of Louisville is a member of the local Chamber of Commerce, and I am a member of the local Chamber of Commerce. So if you want to find the chambers of commerce, you can go to this website and look them up. I was surprised to see how many there actually are. They're mostly associated with your larger areas, so Lexington and Louisville, but you can see any number of geographic areas will tell you who's doing business. And so in Louisville, this organization is known as GLI, or Greater Louisville Inc. You should go to their website, see what events they have that you can network through, find out information, network with people. They have staff boards of directors and ambassadors. A very important link here of who are the major employers in the area. So you've got the book of lists we've already mentioned. You also have a list here from Greater Louisville Inc. And then you have job boards associated with most. Again, that's the open job market, but this job board is Kentuckiana Works, and there's the link to that. We also have a link on our website to Kentuckiana Works. So definitely the Chamber of Commerce, definitely Greater Louisville Inc. These are strategies that I've covered rather quickly and at a surface level that sort of show you how to gain information, how to connect with other people, and you should be looking at these frequently. So when was the last time you went to your professional association's website? Are you connected to them on Facebook and LinkedIn? Do you get news feeds from them? How often do you read the business newspaper? Those are key indicators of how far you're moving in your job search to gain knowledge, to increase your networks. So with that, I have questions, and then I'm going to wrap up very quickly with 3 more slides that sort of give you an all-encompassing view of the job search process. But any questions now about how to expand your network, how to research opportunities through some of these resources?
Yes. Okay. First question is, should you make a list of all the companies you want to work for and go on their websites to see if they have positions, or check places like Indeed and Glassdoor?
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, you should have a list of employers you want to work for. You should check out their website and see if they have open positions. What you'll want to do if you have time before applying to that position is you'll want to network, because your network can tell you maybe a little bit more about what's important to that position or what's important to that employer that you can incorporate into your application. Then you can apply. And then you can follow up with your network. And I have a slide in just a minute that will illustrate this point, but you can follow up with your network and say, hello, I want to let you know that I've applied for the position that you told me about or you provided information on. I'm very excited about this. So you're constantly communicating with your network. So you saw the job posted. I would never just solely apply cold to a position. I would apply, talk to my network, maybe talk to my network, apply, and then follow up with my network. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's a great answer. This one is about networking too. And so what are the success rate of students hired from career fairs? And then can I contact a recruiter after a career fair?
Well, absolutely. You should be contacting a recruiter after a career fair to answer that question. Now, keep in mind that the person at a career fair, a lot of times, their goal is just to collect the resumes, collect the applicants, make an initial assessment on the candidate A, B, or C. You know, with A being a top candidate, B being a maybe, and C being we're not interested. And then they may forward those on to someone else within the organization. It really depends upon the organization, who's recruiting at the fair, and maybe the size of the organization. I find that when you get into medium to smaller size organizations, you're more apt to be able to get a business card from the recruiter and actually follow up with them. So yes, by all means, that is taking it from the open job market, a career fair, and moving it into the hidden job market by then continuing to follow up and keeping yourself, your name, your resume on that person's radar screen. As far as career fairs go, there's not really solid information on what is a solid number on how many people get jobs from career fairs. What you do need to keep in mind, though, is that the employer is very interested in being at that career fair. And the vast majority of the time, the employer is paying a fee to actually be at that career fair. So they are very interested in being there to talk to students. So any opportunity that a student gets to get face time, not computer screen time, but face time is important, which brings up another comment about the COVID-19. The University Career Center and the other career centers on campus, business and engineering, are looking ahead to the career fairs for fall, but we're not certain we're going to be able to have in-person physical distancing career fairs. So we may have to move that to a virtual platform, which would make it even more important that students show up to that career fair. But yes, if an employer has taken time to come out of the office to a campus, it's a great opportunity to expand your network.
Excellent. And are these business newspapers free? Do these business newspapers require a subscription?
They do require a subscription. They are not free. That's why I recommend going to the campus library, to the periodicals section, or going to your local library. You can purchase a subscription. I will say the business periodicals are rather expensive, and by expensive I mean like $125 plus a year. I think that's a little costly. You can go online and get some information online at their website, but as with all newspapers, they're still struggling with how to create their revenue model in this digital economy now that we're 20 plus years into this digital economy. So a lot of their websites are chock full of annoying ads. And so I personally don't click on anything when they try to survey me or ask me questions. I will just find another avenue to get that information. But some periodicals, some newspapers are better about providing information more freely than others. So unfortunately, they have to make money too. So that's why I recommend the library.
And another question is, when in an informational interview, is it appropriate to express interest in the future opportunity at the company where your interviewee currently works?
You know, I think that comes across naturally and organically if you're having a conversation with the professional and you're talking about his or her both field and or employer. Then I think you have the opportunity to express your interest in saying, well, that sounds very interesting, or that's very fascinating, or that's exactly the kind of project I'm interested in working on. You know, if anything ever comes up in the future, you know, would you keep me in mind? Another thing to do after you do an informational interview, if you think it's appropriate and if you had a good contact with them, is reach out to them on LinkedIn if you haven't already done that. So I know at one time we used to all exchange business cards. So I go to a conference and exchange business cards. I rarely do that anymore because if I meet somebody at a conference, I'll look them up on LinkedIn and connect to them. So you'll be in that conversation and you'll be having, and you'll be able to express it, but you can ask, you can say, that's very interesting. If anything like that comes up in the future or comes up when close to graduation, do you mind if I reach back out to you? Also is a great chance to have them look at your resume and or keep your resume. You know, personally, I keep a folder of resumes I get, and they're stuck in that folder until at which time I think I may have an opening or position. Then I go back to that folder and I see who sent me what, and, you know, reach out to them and see if they may still be in the market.
Great advice. And that's all the questions we have right now if you want to wrap up through your last few slides.
All right. So I'll have a question slide at the end, but I wanted to share a minute or three with you. First is a true story. You know, I've mentioned the last recession, the Great Recession, and this is actually a friend of mine who is in another state. And you can see here, he wanted to share with me his story, you know, 10 plus years ago, because he was just really amazed at how the job market had changed since he had graduated from college. So you can see in December of 2008, he was downsized after 14 years with a small investment company. And during his transition, he sent out 800 plus emails to networks, to people. And his LinkedIn account grew from 6 connections to 310. And 70 of his invitations were never answered. And that's to be expected, okay? But you can see way more were answered than were not answered. During his time of job searching, he had one-on-one group meetings, 18 in December, 25 in January, 44 in February, and 23 in the first 3 weeks in March. He said he averaged 7 to 8 emails per day, 6 to 7 networking meetings per week, and he landed 1 job interview and 1 job offer in late March. So that's about what, 4 months, 3 months later. And so we all the time say that the average job search takes about 3 months, may take longer in a recession. And keep in mind that when he got this offer in March of 2009, we were deep into the recession. We were not coming out of it. And so the last statement up there, I think, really illustrates the value of networking and, in fact, just luck in the process, being in the right place at the right time, or you could say divine intervention. But these things are important to networking. He landed his position at a bank by attending a local networking group in which another job search candidate was there, had a cousin at a bank in HR. So he got his one interview and his one job offer through a cousin of somebody he met. So that illustrates and truly is the essence of networking and putting yourself out there. And in the process of putting yourself out there, it's not just putting yourself out there to receive from others, but it's putting yourself out there to also give to others. So to be a help to other people, because you know people and you can help other people get connected and lead into a job opportunity. So keep in mind that this is a two-way street. I have a little cartoon here that is called the Stacey Factor, and I liberated this directly from Donald Asher. He calls it the Stacey Factor. So if you look at a hiring manager who posts a job on a job board or multiple job boards, especially during a recessionary period, they are going to be inundated with resumes. And your resume could be one of those resumes on that hiring manager's desk. And so the hiring manager's job is to narrow this down to a manageable number to then interview, because you cannot interview 500 people. You can interview 4 or 5, 3 or 4 people. And so you happen to know Stacey, who works at this organization. And Stacey said, well, I know my hiring manager is hiring for this position. I'll give him or her your resume. And Stacey bebops into the office. The hiring manager has 4 resumes on the desk. The hiring manager now has 5 resumes on the desk. The hiring manager has your resume on the desk. So your odds are now significantly better. So that goes back to my point of, yes, you can apply through the job posting through the internet, but utilize your network to bring your application to the top of the pile. So that's called the Stacey Factor. You always want to be working on your Stacey Factor. And then finally, this is a slide I've used for years. For me, I'm a very concrete, tangible person. I wish I could say it is a step-by-step process. You do this, then you do this, then you do that. And it's not a linear step-by-step process. It's a circular process. It's like juggling. And at any given time, you've got a number of things going on. You're researching organizations, you're tailoring your cover letters, you're making phone calls to more leads, you're following up on resumes, you're attending group sessions, you're doing informational interviewing, you're practicing your interviewing skills because you're learning as you go. You're actually interviewing, you're managing your online presence through LinkedIn and maybe through Facebook. And let me tell you this, third bullet from the bottom, you are sending thank you letters. And if you don't hear but anything else, if you get somebody to talk to you, if you get a job interview and an internship interview, you need to send a thank you letter. And not just saying, hey, thank you for interviewing me, but saying, hey, thank you. I was particularly interested in what you said about X, Y, and Z. Make it personal. Make it show your interest. Follow up on your phone calls. And in the midst of all of this, you are actually maintaining your life school balance, your life work balance, your life job seeking balance. And so these are the tips for being a savvy job seeker, for being shrewd and experienced. And we want our students, our graduates, our alumni to be shrewd job seekers. And so with that, if you had any more questions, I'll be glad to answer that.
Yeah, that was excellent information, Bill. Thank you so much. One question we have here is, I am relocatable. Where do I let the recruiter know that? In my cover letter or on my resume?
I think it could be a number of, and of course, it would probably depend upon what more information I would know about the candidate. But I would say cover letter is always a good place. A lot of times on resumes now, people are not putting their local mailing address. They're putting their either email address and or LinkedIn contact information and cell phone number. But you could even put up there in your contact information open to relocation. Some people will put it further down on the resume, maybe in part of their summary. If you start off with a summary of qualifications, open to relocation, something like that. But I do believe that all applications should go out with a cover letter, whether they ask for one or not. And so the cover letter would be a great place to illustrate that you are aware that they are in certain location and you're very interested and willing to relocate.
And the last question here, in the current situation, am I going to have to settle for something less than I was really hoping for, or should I hold out and not accept anything less than what I'm really looking for to start my career?
I would change that and say maybe not less, but it could be different. It might be different than what you had anticipated, because who anticipated a global pandemic? I was actually anticipating a recession because this is the longest period we've had in modern U.S. history between recessions. Would be between the last recession and where we are coming up in July. So the longest period. So we're due for a recession. Okay, but I think you will have to settle for different, maybe not necessarily less. What you want to be careful of, and what all folks want to be careful of, and it's really incumbent upon the person's unique situation, but you don't want to get yourself underemployed. And there is research out there from the last recession that shows by taking a position that you are overqualified for can have a significant impact on your future earnings after the recession is over. So I would say maybe different, but don't settle for a lesser position or a lesser qualified position. Those are the situations where it's always good to talk to a career coach and get some advice, or go to these mentoring sessions at different organizations and get advice from your network.
Thanks so much, Bill. That's all the questions that we have from our attendees today. Thank you again for joining us. And we want to remind you of our next week's session, which will be Thursday, May 28th at 1:30. I'll be talking about Handshake and how to use that in your search. And we hope to see you then. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thank you.